Brendan Shine is the author of a travel memoir called High in the Himalaya, which documents how, having completed his formal education, he travelled extensively around India, walking in the Himalaya, frequenting tropical beaches on the Arabian Sea, and travelling over 6,000 kilometres on public transport, always with his pipe and hashish. Brendan has busked in the streets of Basque Country, chauffeured in Italy, played football in Italy and Spain and the Rif Mountains in Morocco, smuggled contraband between continents, and learnt how to survive with schizophrenia. For the past 20 years, Brendan has lived in Spain. Brendan, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast.
Okay, it's my pleasure. Nice pleasure. Nice to see you, Jessica.
We have an interesting story of how we met through the Facebook group, the Hippie Trail. And I said to that, which is a fantastic group with vintage photos of people who backpacked and stuff in the 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties. And when my book came out, I said, oh, hi, everyone. Like, my book just came out, Once Around the Sun from Cambodia to Tibet. And you were so nice and friendly, and then messaged me and said, hey, I wrote a book, High in the Himalaya. Can I post it to you?
That's right. Yeah. I don't know. It just we seem to coincide that day. I don't always follow that group, but it is an interesting group. But
it sure is.
Yeah, I just thought I'd reach out, and there we go.
Yeah, and you did post me your book, and I really enjoyed it. And then I was like, I would love you to come on the podcast and have like a Himalayan book club.
Yeah, great. And of course, with you being in Asia as well, Myanmar and around China, Tibet, and I read your books, and it's very interesting.
What do you think it is about the Himalayas that captures our imagination, like as writers and travelers?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, it's just the sheer size of them. I think they have a magnetic pull. Obviously, it's the biggest mountain range in the world. It spans across many countries. But when you're there, you're just overawed by the sheer majesty of the Himalayas, the mountains, just the size, nothing man can come close. And I studied geology at school, so I'm always interested in things like earthquakes and tectonic plates. And the fact that once India was an island from Gondwana land and pushed into the Eurasian plate, and it went from being at sea level to 7,000-8,000 meters. It's just amazing, and they're still growing. And that, of course, that's why it's an earthquake zone. But they're just amazing. The people who live there are very hardy race. They seem to be built from different material. They're strong. The sheer beauty, and when I was there, the peaceful villages, pine forest, oak forest, herding sheep and goats, apple orchards. And they were quite isolated from the rest of India and the rest of the world.
Yeah, no, I love them. What prompted you to write High in the Himalaya?
Yeah, so the stories in the book, it was 20 years since I'd been to India. I spent 2 years in India over a period of 5 years between 95 and 2000. And I thought, I've got a lot of stories there, and I still remember them vividly, but I thought, yeah, I'm getting to the age, I'm going to start forgetting them, So I was almost compelled. I thought, I must get this down, Yeah. So it was one winter before the pandemic even existed, and I just tapped away in the cold evenings here in the altitude here in Galicia in northwest Spain, and just tapped away for about 6 or 8 months through the winter, and and it was also like a purge. I'd been obsessed with India ever since, but getting it down on paper in black and white can also help you look at your experiences from a third perspective, and also move on from those perspectives, learn from them, and share them. And yeah, I thought it wasn't a travel log really. I thought there was so many stories and different aspects to it that it was fairly unique. And
Yes.
I like the surprise and shock, and also interesting for friends and family to know actually what I'd been through, because they never really knew.
It's a journey of the mind as much as it is a vast journey. That, do you want to describe for viewers, you know, the geographic region, those 6,000 kilometers that you traveled?
Yeah, so yeah, after university, I sort of kind of dropped out, and I'd always been a bit alternative, and friends went into corporate careers, and I'd worked 1 year for an American car company, and I thought, no, this is not for me. And off I went to India on a year visa with Uzbekistan Airlines. I don't know if they still exist. They were pretty rough. They were pretty rough.
Bumpy, yeah.
So from Manchester, flew to Tashkent, and from Tashkent, we boarded another plane, which probably wouldn't have been allowed to fly in Europe. As the seatbelt, I remember the buckle just broke in my hand. I thought that's a good
And it
start.
probably had ashtrays.
Oh, yeah, it did have ashtrays. You could smoke on the back three rows, which I thought, well, why not? I'll try that out.
Amazing.
And off to Delhi, arrived in Delhi, and then just basically toured around using public transport and the trains, the buses, and from north to south, from the mountains down to the jungles, to the deserts, to the beaches on the Arabian Sea. And then the backdrop of the book basically is going to India, coming back to Manchester, having a few breakdowns, obsessed with India, returning to India from 95 to 2000, on and off, back and forth from India, and trying to fix my broken mind and get on track and get a bit more focused and be able to function in this world, you know. And then the backdrop after India was traveling around Israel, Egypt, Morocco, living in Italy, and I finally settled. I came to the south of Spain for 6 months. Then I settled in the north of Spain for 5 years, busking and surfing. And so and then that's more or less the gist of what the book entails. And I was battling with that, with mental health issues and drug addiction.
What do you think it is about India that so gets under our skin and we just sort of fall in love with it and as you say, become obsessed with it and then miss it, you know, with genuine heartache, like you'd miss a person when you leave? I really related to that part of your book.
Yeah, it's and it's not just me, it's a lot of people experiencing that.
People.
You know, I've seen articles. There was one in the Guardian a few years ago, you know, like the Indian syndrome. They've sort of put a label on it. And I think it's just such a different culture. It's everything you know is upside down, is everything you take for granted is totally unexpected. Especially if you come from a cold climate as well. It's warm, it's tropical, it was very cheap, and the people are very friendly. Of course, things have changed now. I'll be talking as the India I knew. It has changed a lot in the last 25 years, but you know, there was no internet, no phones, very little alcohol use, a strict division between men and women. So you usually just pass your time with men.
And then describe when you returned to the UK, you hit a real low point, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I had a dream in India. Well, it was a nightmare, that I was back in Manchester, and it was a nightmare. That was while I was in India, so that was like a forewarning, really. I just had so much fun. If you were like a free spirit or had time, you can just drift around India. from place to place. And
it's
everything's different.
it's so culturally and geographically diverse. That's, I mean, amazing to me. You know,
Yeah.
all the different what is there, 26 state languages or something, but you know, English is widely spoken, so it's not too challenging.
I mean, if you think about Europe and all the different countries, well, every province in India, you know, there can be different religions, different food, different dress. From the north to the south, the people are different. They have different DNA, different genetics. You have the Tibetans influence. You have a lighter skin in the north. You have a darker skin in the south. Different ingredients, different cultures, different food. You know, so every province is like a different country. So it's like the typical Australian who comes to travel and he wants to go to Rome, he wants to go to Germany, he wants to go to London, he wants to go to Ireland. They're all very different. And every province like that in India is distinct in its own way. So
yeah,
you're never spoiled. You're spoiled for choice, and you're never bored. You know.
As
so
compared,
answering your question. So yeah, when I came back to Manchester, I was totally unprepared. People talk about culture shock going traveling. When I got to India, I just opened up. I knew it was the place to be for me, and I just drifted like a leaf on the breeze. I loved it. Then I came back. It was a bit like a reality shock. You know, you've got like your parents saying, "What are you gonna do?" You know, and nobody.
The rest of your life, yeah.
What are you gonna do now? What are you gonna get a job? Are you gonna cut your hair? You can't look like that. And you know, nobody had asked you that in a year in India. You know, they're just being. You know, they're just living in the moment. So. And I started. I hadn't drank in India alcohol, which was I'd a sort of escaped that vice. But back to Manchester, there's not. Just waiting for a bus is depressing, whereas waiting for a bus in India is exciting. You're watching the technicolor things going on. People are friendly. There's music. It's an adventure. Back in Manchester, it's raining. Everybody's in a car going somewhere fast. It's all about the career ladder. And waiting for a bus, you might get faced with aggression and things like that. And then the financial aspects, I just wasn't prepared at all. And I started drinking and had a mental breakdown, but it was like a true love that you'd lost. And I was actually, to try and cope, I was pretending I was in India. I mean, it was that, hardcore.
I know you asked me, what do I do when I'm missing a country?
Yeah.
And I try to recreate it. Like I try, you can buy the sandalwood incense, you can put the music on, which I still like to do. I've got a few items that I still have that are, like beautiful, like beaded quilts and stuff.
Yeah.
But unless you're in a tropical environment, like you can't, it's all just, pretend play, isn't it? I swore to myself, like I had 6 months in India and 2 months in Pakistan and a month in Nepal. And I swore to myself that if I ever got to return to India, I would kiss the ground. And so I went and lived in London, trained as a journalist. Then I moved to Bangladesh, which was great because it was, so similar culturally. And then for my honeymoon, I said to my then husband, we should have our honeymoon in Kolkata. So we went to Kolkata and I kissed the ground. I was back in India. I was just so happy. Yeah. But that's the intensity of the emotions, but I haven't been back since. And that was like 15 years ago. So
I mean, I don't know. I can really identify what you're saying there. I used to do that. I'd get out. I remember I was sitting in the back garden. Luckily it was sunny in Manchester, my mum and dad's house, and I had this blanket. So I put the blanket out. I'm sitting there, I'm putting the incense. My mum didn't know what I was doing, And she said, you think you're in India? I says, yeah, I want to be in India, you know. So looking at photos, putting the music, putting the incense, you know, but however much you try, I think it probably makes it worse, you know, when you're suffering,
No.
you know, but yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of fun in your book as well. And the time period, you traveled slightly earlier than me, but it was both of us was before social media and that incessant kind of documenting and uploading and stuff. And you met some really colorful characters, and I was just laughing out loud. Like, can you tell us about the double identical twins?
Yeah, I mean that was I mean it was surreal. So I'm in this desert region, Rajasthan, at this village, like holy village, Pushkar, where it was either vegetarian or vegan. I know you couldn't bring eggs into the village. That was the thing. Based on a lake, and I was checking that place out and wandering around, and yeah, met some characters. And they said, "Oh, you want to come to a party tonight?" I said, "Oh, fine. Yeah, that sounds like my cup of tea." And there's these two French identical twins, very good looking, long ponytails, very, very dashing they were. But actually, I think they'd come to India, yeah, for an adventure, but maybe hoping to. I think somehow they developed a heroin habit,
Mm.
and not that you know because they were young and strong at this stage. So they were there, and yeah, twins is always funny. I mean, I like looking at twins. Who doesn't? You know, it's
Like an
fascinating.
optical illusion. Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone's smoking joints and pipes, and yeah. But on top of that, so they'd met a couple of girls who were twins, who were also very beautiful and young and kind of party heads. Now I can't exactly. Maybe they were from Quebec. Maybe I think. I can't remember. I knew the guys were French. I can't remember. So anyway, they hooked up, you know. So like, but I mean, it's the old adage. I remember dating once one of a twin, and I wasn't sure which. I couldn't tell the difference, you know. I don't know if you can say that anymore, but I couldn't tell the difference. So I was wondering about the dynamics there, you know, like, is it one twin with one, or is it, you know, is it totally open? But yeah, you know, so we're there in this party, and then anyway, it just fell to pieces because yeah, they I don't think they were doing very well. I think their idea was maybe to break off the heroin, but anyway, they were sniffing lines at the party, and they said, "Hey, Brendan, do you want to sniff a line?" Now, I hadn't done that kind of much hard drugs at that stage. I'd done LSD and hashish, amphetamine. So I just presumed it was amphetamine or cocaine. So I had a sniff at this. Of course, I was 23 and naive. I had a sniff of this. Well, from then on, it was like I was zombied out. I was totally zombied out. Everybody was zombied out. And it turned out I thought it was something like amphetamine or cocaine. It was actually what they call brown sugar, which is like a raw opiate. It's like a
Smack.
raw, it's like on like a dirty heroin, you know, before it's been purified. But the
Oh,
head, okay, so you have the opium, and then from that they synthesize and get heroin. But this is like a process before, so it's like the heroin head, but it's rougher. But I'm no expert because I just tried it this once, thank God. So I tried that, and then we're just zombieing around this village at whatever time, 2 in the morning. I found this like chill out bar open, and we're sitting there and, well, just walking around like ghosts. I can't remember what if I was able to communicate, but we just went round in a bit of a group. Unfortunately, it's a bit unpleasant, but yeah, opiates, you tend to vomit. when you're not used to it, or even when you're used to it, that's part of the deal. So yeah, we were there and being sick and just zombieing out, pretty rough. And I ended up in the morning in some nice white villa. I remember waking up. I don't know how I got there. This like white villa with tropical plants and peacocks. It was quite amazing. I mean, the morning I felt great. I was very blissed, very chilled out. That was, and I was compos mentis. But yeah, those were the twins, and you just wonder how they got on, you know. But you know,
when they were high.
Could have had a double marriage, but I mean, I guess I just wonder if they could identify between which one is which. That was always my conundrum, you know.
Yeah, sure. A bit dicey situation. I think a big part of the appeal in India is the drug culture and the quality of the hash and the price of the hash and the availability. And I think also it's a bit different from like Thailand and Indonesia, where it's like 1 gram and you get the death penalty. I think, you know, there's more because, you know, it's part of traditional culture, isn't it? Like the chillum has been around for centuries, the pipe and opium and stuff like that. Would you say that was like the travelers that you met and you yourself, that was another big draw?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the big reasons I went. And when I was there, it was like part of the culture. One of the religion, one of the gods is Shiva, and all about him is smoking. And yeah, I mean, it's a big thing. I mean, to put it into context, I mean, there's more people smoking in India, charas or maybe marijuana or whatever, than live in Australia. You know, I mean, I mean, it's a big part of the culture. As for example, we have alcohol; they have the pipe. So your labourer will be smoking it, your bus driver, your truck driver, the holy men, everyone. I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of the men would have a toot, you know, whereas we'd go to the bar, have a lager or whatever. So it's ingrained in the culture there. And the hippies, enjoyed that. Like you say, it was cheap, arguably the best in the world. It's grown at, I went to the village where the best charas was grown. And it's funny, it's almost like French wine regions. You have regions of different areas. Of course, you have Nepal, Pakistan, but within regions, you have different regions. And it's just like wine, you know. So it's been grown in this province. Has it been mass produced or organically produced? Has it been hand rolled or mass produced? And all these factors, just exactly like wine. And so you get these hippies who are connoisseurs and I've got this from this year, from this region and all that. And you got very high and enjoyed it. And
maybe you called your book High in the Himalaya. Maybe you could show your book.
Yeah,
because mine's in a moving box.
Yeah,
there it is.
You see that there?
Yeah, cool. Conquering Mountains in the Mind, Journeying in the Himalaya and Returning from Oblivion. Great subtitle.
That's right. So, and because I'm here, we'll tell the audience anyway, I'm here in northwest Spain. You're all down there in Australia. And so I translated it into Spanish as well. So we have Subidon in the Himalaya. Yes. So
did you get a translator?
No, I did it. I actually did it myself.
That's amazing. That's amazing that you have that command over a second language.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. I have done some translating here over the last 10, 15 years for companies, interpreting, translating documents. I mean, I do use Google Translate as well, but then I'll read through it. Of course, if you use Google Translate, what is it? Maybe 85% correct.
Yeah.
And then
Wow.
so then, yeah, I read through it, and then I got a friend. He just did a final tweak because my Spanish is good, but yeah, it's not like my English. But
So impressive. Yeah.
yeah,
Just going back to the abundance of marijuana. I remember in Pakistan, I can't remember if India as well, but weed grew on the side of the road. Like
yeah,
it was just everywhere, you know, pungent and everything. But
yeah.
someone said that it's all the male plants, not the female plants or something. So you couldn't just like pick it and smoke it. I think it didn't have like the
Yeah,
bud.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it's a weed. Oh, it's a
It's a
plant.
weed.
Yeah, you know. So I mean, it just grows everywhere. But to get the potency and everything, like you say, differentiate, taking out the I can never remember. I should know. So you take out the you don't want them females, so you want the males. Or I always get it wrong.
Yeah,
But
it was one of
it's one
those.
of them. So then they'll harvest it in a field in the mountains, you know, and cure it. So I'd be like, I don't know, you could get someone with making strawberries in a greenhouse, and then you get wild strawberries in the field, in the land, you know. So,
yeah, but
yeah,
it's
but yeah,
everywhere.
it's everywhere in the north, and it's a high quality, you know, and
Yeah.
it was very cheap.
Your book also describes, you know, different substances, obviously, you know, by the name of the book, and also you kind of you stop drinking and you come to certain realizations about what works for you and like what doesn't work for you.
Yeah, yeah. I've been drinking maybe from the age of 14 or 15. That was the kind of thing to do in England. I realized I've been drinking with guys who were twice my size. I'm quite small. I'm 5'5" or 165, and they were 6'2". You know, and in England used to drink rounds for rounds, and I think that took its toll. I'd have the odd crazy experience, the odd crazy night out, lose a bit of control. I got tired of the hangovers, and yeah, then got into the hashish. I enjoyed that a lot more. It was more, kept me relaxed. I was a bit more in control. No hangovers. Sorry, I've missed the point of the question. Can you repeat the question, Jessica?
Well, you kind of like the book ends, you have like some of the great how do you pronounce it? Ayurvedic. I never know how to pronounce it. Like
Ayurvedic.
yeah, and you know, you seem like you know that like some weed is okay for you, but not the, you know, you haven't had substances for ages, which I think, you know, there's a lot of experimentation when you go backpacking and you're young, you like try everything and then kind of, you know, that's part of the journey of discovery, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's very true. I mean, yeah, like you, like me, like a lot of young people when they're young, they try every bit of this, try a bit of that, try everything. Hashish really was up my street. I just got in the zone. You know, I could do everything on it. I could drive, I could play music, I could sing, I could work. But slowly, yeah, they call it maturing or whatever. I'd experimented a lot with magic mushrooms, LSD, but they were taking their toll, and yeah, slowly I was drifting away from that, and in a way, a choice, but also forced to, because I wasn't enjoying it. Like a drink, you know, like maybe you drink the first few times and you're laughing and dancing and life and soul. And then maybe 30 years later, you get a bit bitter drinking, like an old man who's a bit, you know. And yeah, the same can happen with drugs. And so I moved away from that. Then I stopped harder drugs completely. Like you say, you're realizing, you're looking at yourself, realizing, is this doing me any good? Am I happy with it? Yeah, I had a lot of struggle with depression. And then I just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't, it wasn't making me happy. It was giving
Mm.
me chest pains, things like that. But you're still addicted, you see, if that's the thing, you're still addicted. So I mean, I know a lot of drug users, they know it's doing their damage. They realize that, but they're addicted, you know, so
Such a
you keep,
torment.
yeah, so you keep doing it. Talking of addiction, I'm going to smoke a cigarette, if that's okay.
That's fine. That's you can smoke away.
Yeah, so the usual cannabis we smoke all around the world, you know, it has THC, so that makes you high, and it has all the other psychoactive ingredients. But the main one that gets you high or stoned or happy or whatever is THC. So I graded that down and just planted CBD plants. So they don't have the psychoactive ingredient, but they relax the body, or not so much. They can still make you a bit woozy, but for example, you could be legal to drive if there's drug tests, and you're much more less likely to experience paranoias and things like that. And that's what people use when they talk about medicinal marijuana. People who are having cancer or leukemia or chemotherapy, the people especially in North America use it as medicinal purposes. But yeah, I was just trying to grade myself down off it. I wanted to stop it. I wasn't happy being a smoker. I'm still the same with cigarettes, but
and that comes through
to float my boat, you know. But eventually, and then I just graded it down. It took years. I think it was 10 years ago. I realized I was having these chest pains. I was diagnosed with hypertrophy, and I was having these stabbing pains. So I realized then, but it took me 10 years to stop. But I just really just weaned it down. And then, after 30 years of smoking hashish, I was free then. I was free. Okay, I've got the tobacco. That's my vice, but it's legal. I can function with it. There's no problem with the law. There's, you know, so.
And it doesn't affect your mental health.
Doesn't affect my mental health. And actually now, you know, so now actually I'm happy that way, you know, and I feel lucky to kind of moved on from that, you know, and that's why I don't mind talking about it, because, you know, if someone's smoking it, they'll be less likely to talk about it because they're a bit colder.
They'll be defensive. They'll be defensive. But your book is it's such a fun read, and it's such an honest read. Like from the first page, I feel that you give the reader all of you. You're not trying to hide some part. Well, maybe you did, but I didn't pick that up. And it is a real journey. Like by the end, you feel quite sort of mellow, and not, because there's a lot of sort of angst in the book, I think, and which all these things I can relate to, which is just part of, I think, also being young and not fitting the kind of corporate mold. Like, my book is about like leaving, because like I don't know what I want to do, because everything I can see is not what I want to do. So what am I going to do? You know? But it's a nice kind of sense of completion. And you talk about as well how like where you live in Spain is really good for your mental health. Like, can you tell us about that as well?
So I the best places for me in India were always rural. You know, it could be the beach, it could be the desert, or the villages. It was always rural. And since then, I was happy if I was in a rural setting. I was never really happy back in England. It was just a different mindset. I couldn't fit. Whether it's a part of that is the weather, you know, and so I traveled around, and whenever I was outside the UK, it didn't care where I was. I just felt more positive, more self-assured, more free. And eventually I ended up here in this northwest corner of Spain, which is quite green. It has 4 good seasons: a good summer, a light, nice spring and autumn, and quite a mild winter. And it's rural, it's backward a bit. It's mainly old people, but you know, like just this morning, because this is quite early for me. It's 7 o'clock there. Is that right? Or getting up to
Yes.
8 o'clock in the
Coming
evening.
close to 8. Yeah.
So I went for a walk this morning, you know, down a leafy forest track just by my flat, and you know, saw nobody, just the oak forests and the fresh air. I have an old car. I park it up where I want. There's no looking for parking. I leave it unlocked. I grow organic produce,
Beautiful.
and it's just a sense of freedom. There's no aggression. There's no road rage. Even the roads are quiet. Yeah. So I feel very lucky, but that's how I've chosen, and I cannot live in a concrete jungle, a rat race, or whatever they call it. And I'm away from that competitive environment. I'm away from the capitalist environment. Yeah, it's on a shoestring. And luckily I've got like you, I've got 2 children, and it's a great environment for them to grow up in. It's a bit like, I try and make it like the 70s for them, you know, like skateboards and climbing trees. I mean, they're getting a bit old for that now, but yeah. So I mean, I just like to be away from the madding crowd. I need it because of my mental makeup as well, to take things slowly so I can make the correct decision. If I'm being rushed, pushed, and pressured, that's not for me. You know, I remember that the psychiatrist once, he said, you need to avoid stress. I said, well, that sounds okay. I'll try that. And that's what I've done. He also said, have a drink, but don't get drunk. Now that's a bit more tricky, but
That's
yeah,
a slippery slope, you know.
yeah, drink, but don't get drunk. I mean, what's the point?
Weird advice.
Yeah, but yeah,
it's like smoke, but don't inhale.
Sorry.
You know, like smoke, but don't inhale.
Yeah.
You know?
So, but I'm just happy in the rural setting. Of course, then you can dip in. I can go for a week or two, visit my parents in Manchester, or you can go to the city. It's always there if you want it. Yeah. Of course, there's the downside. You know, there's not many jobs. Financially, you're hit, but you can. It's a balance. You cannot have everything. You cannot have the sports car without the stress. So it's
it's a choice we make in our lives. And you're a true individual, which, you know, I realized as soon as I began reading your book. Just finally, though, people might be wondering why you didn't live your entire life in India.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I know the answer to that. You know, because I saw people who've been there 30, 40 years.
Yeah, people do stay.
Just stay there or come back in the summer, do the like festivals, selling trinkets and clothes and whatever, and drugs, whatever, in the summer. Yeah, I don't know what pulled me back, because I mean, I was obsessed, but I was living in Italy. So what I used different countries around Europe as a kind of a methadone, you know, a halfway house. I wasn't in England, I wasn't in India, but I was kind of freer anyway, because I was outside Manchester, outside the, what are you doing? You know what? I was freer. I don't know.
Well, you fell in love, didn't you? That was a contributor.
I did as well. Yeah, I fell in love a few times. I fell in love, and I went to see a girl in Israel. So I was living in Italy. I met this girl in India from Israel, and I went to visit her. It was an absolute nightmare. But I went.
I loved that part though.
Yeah, I went, and I don't know what we were expecting, you know. I mean, because I guess we were so stoned in India, we just drifted together. We also, one reason, I had this guru who I mentioned in the book, Rocket Baba, this character, and that's how I met the girl. But he banished me from India in the end. Well, that's what he said. He banished me from India. He said, "Don't come back, don't come back." And I never went back. Now,
why? What reason did he give?
Well, he was annoyed because I was his disciple. It's like they call it a chela. So I was his disciple. I'd climb the trees and cut the branches and the leaves to make these Ayurvedic potions and stuff. And we used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Everyone else in India was asleep. You get up at 5 o'clock, we'd start banging on these pipes, looking at the stars. It's pretty crazy. It was wild. He had a lot of charisma, and like just people were attracted to him.
Yeah.
Some people call him a con man, whatever, but he had a lot of information on Ayurveda, and he looked very young for his age. And but then, yeah, of course, I was mid-20s. This nice girl came along, and I was like, drifted my attention from my disciple duties, as it were, you know. So he saw that, and like, yeah, but I'll never know. He probably did me a favor, you know, because I think if I'd still gone back to India, I think even my mental or physical body will have fallen apart. I probably won't be here now. I wouldn't have had kids.
Yeah.
And I saw hippies who had been there 30, 40 years, and they get tired, you know. Something you're doing at 25, 30, you're strong, so you get stomach problems, mosquitoes, malaria, problems with the police. That's okay when you're 30, but when you're 50, I don't know, you like your bed, your comforts, your pillow, a bit more, you know. So it spun me on from that.
Life can become very tenuous because you can't ever really become a citizen of India unless, you know, I think you marry an Indian person. So, and you've got social security or property ownership can be tricky, you know.
And I think, you know, for a couple of years I can ride my luck, but on that hippie trail Facebook page we met, I've seen stories of guys who've stayed there, then they've done 4, 5, 10, 15 years in prison, that kind of thing. I mean, a real nightmare, a real absolute nightmare.
There is a dark underbelly to the kind of nirvana that people go in search for. Do you know, I met a woman on a train in India who was freely admitted. She'd been in India for years. She stole passports off tourists and travelers. And she would get, you know, like up to $10,000 for an EU passport. And I'm sitting there traveling alone, like 25 years old, like locking my pack to the train because she's sleeping in the berth opposite me. And she was just so unashamed and open about her criminality. And her husband was there, and they had a daughter called India because she was like conceived, not born in India or some shit, you know, like, but you're just like, wow, like you're not living in the real world. Like, you know, like,
and there's some people really out there. I mean, in a way I was envious, and like maybe I just didn't have the balls to do it in the end, you know, like just to burn that passport. And I guess in the back of my mind, I had my parents back home, you know. Now they're quite proud. They've got I've given them, I haven't given them grandchildren, but I've had grandchildren. So even though I'm still off being alternative, I'm in their sphere. If I was in India, you know, I mean, I remember people, you know, were asking, "Where's Brendan?" "Oh, he's in India. He's still in India," you know. And you really you were away. You were gone, like emigrating to Australia. You were out there, you know. So, and
I think there can become a total inability to return to your homeland. Like I had terrible reverse culture shock, but I still did it. I still went through what was actually an agony, and I got to the other side. But I think you can get to a point where you can never re-assimilate back to your own culture.
Yeah, I mean, if I'd done another couple of years in India, that was it. You know, I'd have thrown the towel, and I would have been a different person. Whether I've been still be alive, I'm not sure. You know, I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of risks that are taken, but the passion in your book, the way that you were completely consumed by the world, by a continent. I loved that, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it was a love story. You know, I always say it's still in my heart. It still breaks me up. You know.
Mm.
And it was a time and a place to be there. Now, a lot of people say it's not the same. Okay, you're going back when you're 50. If you're going back when you're 25, you have a different energy. You take more with you. But I think part of it is gone as well. A lot of those
What do
places.
you mean? Like, people say it's different. Like, in what way? Because the big cities have gotten bigger. It's more developed, more global.
Yeah, so like for example, you might have gone to a village and it was quaint, rustic, wooden houses, and now it's just all the trees have been chopped down, a load of concrete thrown up. Of course, your average Indian, well, not there's an average Indian, there's a billion of them, but your middle class Indian has money, so there's a lot of tourism and the good things and bad things that bring. And there's mobiles everywhere, internet. Before, an Indian boy in a village, he wouldn't have seen Western TV. He would be very, you know, it's very limited what he would have seen. They were kind of innocent, you know, they were innocent. You'd have 20-year-old boys walking down the street with their best friend holding hands.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Now, they weren't gay. They were friends.
Yeah, just
you know, like, just like innocent, like maybe good friends, and in Australia or England, they'd be like 9-year-olds and good friends, but like they were like 20, innocent. They'd go to the river, they'd have one shirt, they'd wash the shirt in the river, they'd dry it, they'd swim, they'd play cards together, share a cigarette between 5, and go back to the village. And that was their life. And they were innocent, totally not corrupted by Western media. Now it's the biggest downloader of porn in the world, India. You know, alcohol has been poshed. It's poshed. It's a bigger part of the culture. There's bars. It's become less taboo. But with the downsides of alcohol, and of course they've still got. I think now maybe you can have girlfriends or boyfriends, but it's still not advanced like or like it is in the West. So you've got all these men drinking alcohol and having this imagery, and then no outlet, not having a girlfriend. They've got the parents want them to force them into an arranged marriage, and they want to be like some kind of Western toy boy. And of course, then you have the problem. You have a great problem with rape.
Yeah, there's been some terrible.
So all I can see is that it's been corrupted, unfortunately, you know, by just media, and the alcohol, and of course the population is booming, a lot more money about. So it's not the paradise a lot of them say it once was. Of course, I'm sure there's still pockets, and I'd still enjoy it, and the smells and the sights and the poverty are still there, you know.
Yeah, but no, I'm sure if I returned to many of the places, it would be quite different from what I saw sort of pushing 20 years ago, because the progress is so fast. Yeah. Oh, well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this lovely dose of nostalgia.
Let me ask you a question. I don't know, because let's have a look. This one is an interesting one about what thoughts do you have for yourself and for your children concerning a national identity linked to any given place?
Well, I mean, Australia is home now, and their dad is Bangladeshi, and they can speak Bangla, and that's a big part. And he's, you know, helped create that identity, which is great. And I love still hearing Bangla because I miss it. Like, you know, it's really nice to hear, and they have like pretty dresses and things like that. But Australia, for me, it took a while. Like, I had such bad reverse culture shock that I ended up on a doctor's couch, and she told me I had cultural adjustment disorder. I had
Wow.
terrible insomnia. Yeah, it was an awful 6 months. But
Yeah.
now I feel travel has given me the benefit of perspective. So when I am having a stressful day, I don't feel that the sky is caving in on me. Like, you know, there are bigger problems. I feel lucky and grateful for things like democracy. Like, I still greatly value when we have elections in Australia. I don't mind paying tax. And, you know, when my kids have been sick, you know, I had to take my daughter to hospital once, and the care was just amazing. And, you know, I lived through some really sketchy situations, like around the election in Myanmar, and feeling that anything could happen to me and there would be no recourse, there would be no protection. You wouldn't go to the police because they would multiply your problem. You know, that gets scary. It gets really scary. And recently, when my house, suddenly I walked out and there was bulldozers in my front yard and stuff, I felt like I was living in Myanmar again, where I didn't know what was going on, and no one was telling me, and I couldn't understand my environment. But I went, this is, you know, you just put that hat on and you just go through the motions of like trying to problem solve, or just live with the uncertainty, which is what you have to do when you're in a foreign country often, is just be comfortable with the uncertainty. But it's still unpleasant, you know?
No, I mean, those things, you stop taking those for granted, like maybe a good education, a good health service, because, like you say, in Myanmar or in India, you don't know what you're going to get. You know, I mean, there's a story of this German man in Goa, and he was bitten by something in his leg. He went to the local hospital and his leg had swollen up like an elephant. And he passed out, and he woke up, and there's this doctor, and the doctor's there standing over him going, cat food, cat food, cat food. And the guy's going like, cat food, cat food, cat food. What's, you know, the guy was like, where am I? My legs, I'm in this hospital, cat food. And then he starts going, no, cat food, cat food. He's saying like cut foot. They were going to amputate. And luckily he woke up, and when the doctor went, he just grabbed these things and somehow ran out of there. He got in a taxi, went straight up to Bombay, and there was a German hospital or foreign hospital in Bombay, and they just injected him with some antibiotics, and he was fine within a few weeks. But I mean, they could have amputated his leg, you know. So I mean, you don't take for granted if you ever got a good consultant, you know. But and just one, you know, you can imagine. But just one nearly final point. I know you lost your questions, but you asked me about the Ayurveda, and you mentioned it before. Basically, it's just like a holistic therapy, which has been going for 5,000 years. Basically, it's plants dried, and you take them as supplements to prevent and to cure. Staying with these holy men in the Himalayas, I learned a few tricks. What they use. Of course, I've only sketched the surface, but it is quite amazing as an alternative remedies. I mean, I still value Western medicine, but some things I've used, and they're really, for me, been quite amazing. One was I cured my asthma using the neem plant. I started getting arthritis in my fingers because I'm a guitarist and for my age. And I reversed the onset of arthritis using Indian frankincense. I sorted out my digestive system using turmeric. And it really is amazing and sort of underlooked. Some of it's becoming quite popular now online. There was ashwagandha, which was great for lifting your mood. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's just that, but I'm 52, Jessica, and like I have friends who have been working in the corporate world And I don't know why. They're either bald, fat, or grey. You know, I'm quite proud of my long blonde locks. I've been surfing. I met an Australian in the water last week surfing. That was crazy. He was traveling down from Iceland. He's been living in Iceland for 2 years. Maybe he got
Oh,
tired of the heat, but yeah, he was a real nice guy. And we were just me and him surfing, and he's saying, "Yeah, living the dream, mate, living the dream." And it was like, "Yeah, great, man." But yeah, that's Ayurveda. I'd recommend it for anybody. It's
and if
very,
people read your book, they will have some of your recommendations at the end of the book, which is, you know, you kind of end the book with a really wholesome, you know, message to the readers, which is what, you know, you start out as like, you know, hard drinking, hard partying kind of guy.
yeah. And now it ended up like relaxed to the rural setting. Somehow I'd overcome depression, overcome the diagnosis of schizophrenia. You know, since the diagnosis, you know, I'd traveled, I'd learned a new language, I began to surf, I played many concerts, you know, so I really moved on, which for a normal person may be challenging, but someone with mental health issues, it was a challenge. But I just followed my path and followed the light, you know. And but yeah, it was nice because like I think that was the nice way to get the book down. Probably helped me, like, you know, I've ended that chapter, new chapters open, and like you say, wherever you are now, you still have a different perspective because you've been in Myanmar, you've been in Tibet, you've been in China, you've been in India. So someone who's never left the city, they're a bit blinkered, but you've got something to compare it to, you know. And I know we must be running out of time, so I'll finish off with a little poem, which is, I'm writing my next book. It's just a compendium of anecdotes, stories, and poems. It's a bit eclectic at the moment, but I'm getting that together. But this is when you asked me about living in the countryside. So this is called a Galician poem, Nature's Lament. Okay.
Lovely.
So, with the earth in our fingers, the wind in our hair, the sun on our face, the music on the breeze, the animals in the forest, the crackling red and yellow fire and dying orange embers, the cows in the lush grass, the birds on the wing, cuckoos call in the day, owls comforting hoot at night, bats swooping in the dusk, the bubbling stream, the silence, cold cider after toiling the land, the sleepy contented hound, the cat hunting the mouse, the crickets and grasshoppers chirp, signaling the arrival of the hot sun, the starkest night, and shining moon through the silver clouds, the magic that is life.
That is beautiful, Brendan.
Okay, so
Thank you so much. Wow, that's beautiful. When do you think that book will be ready?
well, I don't know. I might have to talk to Hembury Books. We'll have to talk about that.
Oh,
Yeah, it's getting there. Yeah, it's because it's poems. It's probably going to be a bit shorter. But yeah, I've just brought a lot of different things. There's stories as well, different stories, a few poems. You know, so
I'd love to hear more of your stories. I love your writing, and your life has made a great book.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure, Jessica.
Yeah. Great to talk in person, Brendan. Get in
Okay.
touch.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.